if you don't have the good bacteria that digests food for you, you're not able to get other nutrients, right? So you can be eating different vegetables or whatever, but you're not getting zinc, you're not getting, selenium. And here's the thing, like for selenium, for example, if you are eating food and your body's not digesting it properly, one of the things that happened, so for me, not only did I have yeast candida, I had leaky gut. And with leaky gut, what that means is that your intestines become permeable, which basically means it's like holes going in, developing in your intestine that allows bigger food particles, undigested proteins, undigested fats, undigested carbs to basically make it through. And if you ever have an undigested protein, that's basically the definition of an allergy. And so when I first started in 2012, one of the things that I was experiencing was an increase in allergies, especially seasonal allergies. I would actually get migraines right around springtime, and right when all the pollen was basically going off and all of that. But not only that, I was developing food allergies. Any kind of protein, like gluten especially, I was extremely sensitive to that, and that was because my body was not digesting these proteins. And what happens when you have undigested proteins and they make it through your gut wall, well, now this becomes basically a foreign body, an intruder, an invader, if you will. And the body basically looks at that protein and says, hey, I didn't make you, right? Because the way that the body works is it breaks down proteins into amino acids, and then it takes those amino acids and it builds its own protein. And during that building of a protein, the body basically, it creates a signature. That's what your DNA does. And it's where it stores, basically, it says like, hey, I made this protein. This protein is part of me. If there's an undigested protein, the body didn't make it, there's no signature to it, so the body recognizes that as a foreign invader, and it basically says like, hey, that's a body that's not our body, so it creates antibodies and it begins to attack. And that's basically where an autoimmune condition begins, right? Hashimoto's. And so you basically have these proteins lurking around your body. And again, if you also have bad bacteria tends to, the way that bacteria eat is they release enzymes, and enzymes are basically proteins as well. And so these proteins can also be considered foreign invaders. And so, different tests that you can find, that you can do to actually find out if you have this going on, is like thyroid peroxide antibodies or thyroid globulin antibodies. These are the ones that basically go and attack, the thyroid. And if you're lacking selenium and you have thyroid peroxide antibodies going on, that's basically what's going to cause this to, it's going to aggravate that. And again, I'm starting to ask myself, is it really all these issues that I'm experiencing that my thyroid's not producing enough hormone, or is it that I'm not getting these nutrients needed to basically stop a lot of these issues, from happening? Another one would be like vitamins, B12, so you can basically eat protein, you can eat meat where you're supposed to be able to get B12 or, iron or ferritin. If you don't have, these nutrients because you're not digesting proteins, iron, for example, iron is used in hair production. And so if you're not getting enough iron, what the body does, it says like, hey, you know what? We need iron for more important functions. So let's put hair growth, aside. And so your hair starts falling off if you don't have enough iron in your diet. And what iron is used for is actually T3. Once the liver makes T3, it needs to be transported to the cells of your body, and that's iron is actually one of the nutrients that the body uses for this transportation. But again, if you don't have enough iron, whether it comes from digestive issues or, especially for women, if you have heavy menstrual cycles, or maybe pregnancy tends to also cause a lot of loss in iron levels, which is why there's a lot of women that post-pregnancy, all of a sudden they become hypothyroid. Well, this is where one of the things that, begins to happen. And so again, I started to ask myself, like, is it really that my thyroid could be producing hormones and my liver can actually be converting T4 into T3, but it may not be getting transported to the cells because of a lack of iron? So again, I go back to like, is it really just a thyroid problem, or is it also a nutrient deficiency problem? So as you begin to understand, more about each of these things that I started to find out and discover as I started to go through my journey and started to find out, okay, like there are things here that I can be doing better, that I could be learning more about. This is where, you know, my knowledge box started to basically expand. I started to find like, hey, there are solutions out there that can help me get my energy back, stop my hair loss, clear my brain fog, and all of these things. And these are some of the things that you know, started to help me out. The next one was basically minerals, zinc. There's magnesium, copper. I mean, there's a bunch of these minerals that I know are needed for digestion. And the reason why I know this was because brewing beer, I know that I cannot brew beer without minerals. So, you know, water is like 98% of a beer. It's the main ingredient of beer, which is why brewers put a lot of emphasis on water, and most importantly, minerals, right? Checking for the pH of the water, making sure that we have enough calcium and carbonates depending on the beer style that we're brewing. We'd add like gypsum salt, which is basically calcium, or different calcium carbonates or whatever. But I also knew that we needed to have enough zinc and, you know, a lot of these other minerals in order for digestion to happen. So minerals was, you know, one of the things that really started to bring me down this path of understanding digestion better. It also started to help me understand food better. Let's go back to digestion and minerals, food. So for food, this is where I started to understand why it's important to go for organic. And even though organic is not always necessarily good or worth it, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but most importantly, why you want to avoid conventional foods, and especially fruits and vegetables. And one of the reasons for that is because conventional fruits, plants, you know, vegetables, basically what they found out was that you can grow a plant with just 3 nutrients: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So they found out, hey, if I'm farming, you know, if I'm growing an apple tree, all I need to do is fertilize the soil with NPK, but that doesn't mean that there's any minerals in the soil. And if you're eating an apple, the apple's only going to have as many minerals as they are in the soil. Now, because you don't have minerals, here's what that means. It means that this tree has a weak root system, and that weak root system is basically the equivalent of a weak immune system. So this tree is not able to handle bad bacteria, fungus, and different things that may start to eat the tree and the plant. It's just like it happens in our gut. If we have bad bacteria, we can have some that will start to eat us or start to eat the foods that we are eating. Same thing happens here, and that's why with conventional, they have to use different things like pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and things like that to keep the tree from being eaten alive, and therefore you can get the fruits. But now you're eating demineralized food. So again, you're not getting the minerals that you need for proper digestion. And not only that, you're also now taking on some of these herbicides and pesticides, which are basically designed to kill bacteria. Now remember, our gut system, our immune system is basically bacteria. And the problem here is that, you know, when you are eating foods like that, is that it's, you know, not only affecting the bad, but it's also affecting the good bacteria. And that is also what brings down digestion, can bring down, you know, your vitamin D levels and all of these other things. Now I start to get a better understanding that, hey, I need to start eating more foods that have more minerals. And again, because the food industry is now kind of like understanding that, hey, you know, people pay more money for organic, they start to label things organic, but now the practices are no longer about making sure that the food has minerals and grown in the right ways. Now they have different definitions. So you have to really get smart and understand food, but that's something that I'm going to be talking about later on. I have to build up upon this because it's a big topic, but understand that, is it really just a thyroid condition, or is it that you're not getting your minerals basically from the foods that you're eating, and also you may be eating foods that have things that are affecting your gut flora, right? So here's back to this little box, you know, it starts to expand, right? You start to grow in knowledge, you start to understand, okay, there are other things that I need to look at in order to get my energy back, because you need minerals for digestion. You need digestion to, you know, for all the things that I just covered basically.